Hello all, good morning. Surinder, Tejasvi, Vaibhav.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Naveen.
Yeah. So we'll wait for 5 more minutes and we'll start.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, yes, who is that? Yeah. So we'll start in next 3 minutes. Let us wait for others. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, Naveen, we are able to see.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. If someone is new today, share your email IDs in the chat. Okay. Yeah. So yesterday also we had one demo session. So there we discussed what are all the prerequisites, right? And we discussed about each module where it will fit in our MVC. Let me go through it quickly. So basically Spring framework and Spring Boot microservices. Okay. Spring and Spring Boot microservices are for Java developers. Okay. So if you have already core Java knowledge, that would be enough to understand Spring and Spring Boot microservices. I'm expecting at least core Java knowledge. Okay. Along with that, if you have or if you know about XML, what is HTML, and what is annotation, that would be great enough. Okay. And this is for Java developers who wants to become a Java developer to build web applications or microservices applications, right? You could able to comfortably build such applications. Okay. So after this course, you would able to build by using Spring, right? You can able to build any standalone applications, right? Any inventory or shop management. If you want to use Spring there, you can use for such applications. You can build any web application, single page or any complex web app that you have. You can build web application also, and you can build or you can break your big application into multiple services, and you can build that services also. We call it as microservice. Okay, we build that applications also using Spring Boot, and you can deploy them in cloud and you can play with it. So those applications you could able to build. Okay, so it's easy to manage applications using Spring. Development time efforts wise and the understanding or the modularity, right? Clear logic separations, that all we maintain here. It's easy to understand for others, even if someone implement a logic in Spring, and if you are new to that application, it's easy that a clear logic separation we have in Spring, we can easily understand. And making Spring applications is not that much complex if you compare with your EJB components or servlet components that we have earlier, right? This is not that much complex. Even if it is not having complex configuration logic also. Simply you need to focus on your business. That's all. Remaining all on the fly, Spring will provide. Okay. So to make applications, right? Any web app or microservice based applications, we need to understand first these modules. Okay, Spring core module, which is the basic core module that helps to do the other modules, or that helps to make you understand how to use other modules. Okay, this is the basic core module. We learn all the core concepts here. All the core concepts of Spring we learn here. Then Spring JDBC for doing database operations. Okay, so a lightweight JDBC they given here. We can utilize that JDBC for database operations. And Spring given support for ORM integration. And we have AOP to add cross-cutting services to our application. And for building web applications particularly, we use Spring MVC. And for applying security, for applying transactions, okay, we have multiple modules. Okay, and to cover these topics, to cover this basic Spring framework concepts, right, up to 20 days sessions we need. 20 days only, weekdays we will have sessions here. Okay, and Spring Boot, a advanced Spring framework. Using the Spring Boot, you can build web applications as well as microservices applications. Both we can build by using Spring Boot. Okay, Spring Boot is advanced than the old Spring framework, but still this is built on top of Spring only. Okay, internally we are going to use all the Spring concepts. It is a little advanced. Okay, so using Spring Boot, we can build web applications and microservice based applications also. To cover this content, we need 10 working days, which means 2 weeks. Okay, and we discussed about MVC architecture. Okay, basically, whatever the application, right? Is it a web application or a microservice application? We follow MVC architecture. We follow MVC architecture to build our applications. Let me show you the image that we draw yesterday. Okay, let me zoom it. Are you guys able to see? Yeah. So basically, yeah. So when you build any application, right, using MVC, either you use servlets, EJBs, or you use any programming .NET or PHP, whatever it is. We follow the standard MVC architecture. We follow the standard MVC architecture. It will start from here. So we will have views, presentation layers. Okay, we'll create presentations which includes all our designs, forms, buttons, animations, videos, audios, whatever we have. We put them under videos. I mean views. All our designs and forms, everything will comes under view layer, presentation layer. So once done with this presentation layer, for submitting forms or getting the data and showing it in the presentation layer, okay, we implement controller classes. Okay, so controller class responsibilities are, it need to do kind of security checks, and it need to read data which is coming from the presentations, and it need to do all the validations, and once done with that, it need to forward the request to model layer. As it MVC stands for model view controller, I got a request from view controller, read the data and it need to transfer to model layer. Okay, so once model send the response back, we are going to redirect response pages to again views. That is the controller job. So in MVC, controller job is, it need to apply security, and it need to read data, it has to do kind of validations, and it need to forward your request to model, and finally it need to send response pages. Now when it comes to the model will have business logic. Your model will have business logic, only business code we will have in the business, and CRUD operations we do from DAO layer. And for doing CRUD operations on the database, right, we create connection pools also. So all these connection pools, business and DAOs, we will maintain under model layer. Okay, and apart from that, you might have some services you need to apply, kind of logging services, transaction services, right, and email notifications, SMS notifications. If you want to do all that services, we can write them separately under model layer. Okay, we can write them separately under model layer. Now we need to talk about Spring here. So I understand that for views and for controllers and for model, we have this many responsibilities. By using Spring or by using Spring modules, up to which layers we can cover. Okay, coming to presentation layer, do we need really Spring here for creating these forms? Do we need any special framework, a Java framework support required here? Really not required. For creating views, simple HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? A Bootstrap, CSS framework, jQuery, Angular JS, React JS, or Angular, and final option is JSP. If you want really Java code, use JSP. Until unless you don't have or you don't need JSP support, it is not really required and not recommended also. You can go with a separate technology stack for creating your presentation layer. Now when we submit this data, to do this security operations, read operations and all, you need to implement controllers. In Spring we have Spring MVC module we have. Using the Spring MVC you can implement these controllers. Spring MVC is going to provide you support to build controllers. We have multiple modules, right? We have multiple modules like IOC, JDBC, ORM, MVC, right? So MVC will helps you here. Spring MVC module will help you here for building controller classes, and Spring Security also we can use here for doing authentication and authorization. When this user logs in, we can authenticate that user, and we can check whether that user is having authorizations to particular pages or not. That authentication and authorization we can do by using Spring Security. Okay, so the complete controller stack we can maintain by using Spring MVC and Spring Security. Fine. Now when it comes to business layer, as this business layer may need some transaction support, may need some other notification support or any other services support, your business logic might require. So for your business logic, you can use simple Spring Core. Spring Core should be enough. And for applying transactions, we have Spring Transactions module. Using Spring Transactions, you can apply transactions for making your cloud operations consistent. So Spring Transactions also we can apply on our business layer. And to add your cross-cutting services like email notifications or logging or SMS notifications, if you want to add any separate services, you can integrate them by using Spring AOP. Using AOP, we can integrate cross-cutting services to our business. Without disturbing our business logic, we can able to add that cross-cutting services using Spring AOP. So AOP module is useful to add cross-cutting services to your business. And coming to DAO, for doing database operations and for connection pools. If you want to create connection pool, we have a connection pool implementation from Spring and other third parties also. Okay, that's a simple class that we have available for creating connection pools and for managing CRUD operations, right? For doing all the database operations, we can use Spring JDBC module, we can use Spring ORM module, or you can use Spring Data module. Using any of these module, you could able to do CRUD operations. We understand that MVC security useful for controller, and transactions, Spring Core, Spring AOP will use for our model layer. And for DAO operations, we can use Spring JDBC, Spring ORM, and Spring Data, right? And who will manage all these classes? When you make a web application by having multiple views, multiple controllers, and your business class, DAO logic, everything you have implemented using Spring. Finally, you converted your application into WAR file. In generally web application we convert into where, right? Web archive file. I implemented some online bookstore web app. So finally you are going to convert your application into WAR file. Usually the WAR files we deploy into Tomcat, a servlet container, or you have other servlet containers also. Use Tomcat or Undertow or Jetty or WebLogic, WebSphere, JBoss, any container you can use to run your WAR file. Generally for lower investments, right, open source softwares are recommended, which there you no need to pay anything for your software also. So Tomcat or Undertow Jetty, those softwares will come as open source. You no need to pay anything, just use them as they are open source. You can use Tomcat or Undertow or Jetty web container. The web containers must be enough to run your application. So you build application using all these Spring modules and finally convert into WAR and deploy into any web container. So web container will manage all your classes by using help of IOC container. IOC containers are embedded containers in your Spring Core module itself. IOC containers will come along with your Spring Core module. These are embedded containers, which means along with your Spring module, these classes are provided. Along with your Spring module, core module, these classes has given as a simple Java class. So IOC containers are embedded containers. These containers are responsible, or these containers are capable to manage your controllers and to manage all your model classes. Everything can be managed by IOC containers. Okay, so if it is a var file, you need to deploy it into a Tomcat. But when you go with Spring Boot, right, you no need to make it as a var file. You can deploy directly as a jar file into Spring Boot. So in Spring Boot also we have Tomcat. Spring Boot came with along with Tomcat. You don't need to download it separately. A embedded Tomcat server it have internally. So when you use Spring Boot, embedded Tomcat will start your IOC container. Your IOC container again will take care of your classes. Finally, you are going to make it as a var file or a jar file. Who will manage your classes? Your IOC containers only will manage your classes. Your IOC containers only will manage your classes. Okay, we are talking about MVC, security, transactions, JDBC, AOP, and all this. How these frameworks provided to us? How these frameworks provided to us? These frameworks are given in the form of jar files only. These frameworks are given in the form of jar files only. Whatever the module, right? IOC module, Spring Core module given in the form of Spring Core jar file. You just need to download this jar. You just need to download the Spring Core jar file and you can use in your application. Similarly, for JDBC, Spring JDBC given Spring JDBC jar file. For ORM, we have Spring ORM jar files. For AOP, they given Spring AOP jar file. Everything given in the form of jar only. Spring Web jar file for MVC. For security, Spring Security. This is how they given everything in the form of jar files only. So frameworks implemented as a simple Java classes. Frameworks also implemented as a Java classes and they given to us in the form of jar files. You need to use these jar files in your application. You just simply need to download them, right? Or through Maven you need to put these jar files dependencies in your application and that's it. You can use them. Okay. So Spring Framework came in the form of jar file. Your framework given Spring Framework, all the modules, your Spring Framework modules given in the form of jar files. In the form of jar files only they have given it. So let us see what are all the jar files. They given many jar files to us. They given many jar files, Spring jars. Let me show you them. Yeah, here we have. See, Spring 3 version jars I have here. There are many Spring jar files. Just order by naming convention. Yeah. See here, Spring Web Flow, Spring Web Servlet, Portlet, Spring Framework Transactions, Test, OXM, ORM, JDBC, Spring Expression, Spring Core, Context, Spring Beans, Spring Aspect, Spring ASM, Spring AOP. See? So your framework given in the form of jar files only. Just you need to download these jars through Maven repository or you can create as a Maven project and through Maven dependencies also you can use these jar files. Okay, Spring modules given in the form of jar files only, we should utilize them in our application. You know, right, how to use jar files? So when you build any application, you need to create your application, create application in Eclipse and add jars into build path. This is the step one that you should do. You need to create your application. You know how to create application. Create a simple Java project, create a simple Java project, and you need to add jars to your build path. Now you could able to use Spring features. This is the basic step that we should do. Okay. So these are all the modules that we use in our MVC implementation in general in web application, or it can be a microservice application. We can utilize these modules to build our web app or microservices application, right? And we can implement our required web apps or standalone applications or microservices applications. Okay, so I'll show you a simple example. Okay, so we will start in this order. Okay, we will start in this order. We will start, or we follow this order. First I'll start with Spring Core module. Spring Core, module. Then next we'll go to Spring JDBC. Once done with Spring Core module, we can start looking into any other module. Okay, so we'll follow a order like Spring Core, after Spring Core Spring JDBC and Spring ORM. Then before Spring ORM, I'll cover Hibernate. I'll take 2 sessions for Hibernate also. Hibernate framework also I'll cover here. Hibernate framework. Hibernate is a separate framework. Okay. Once done with JDBC, before ORM, I'll take few sessions, at least 2-3 sessions, 2 or 3 sessions hardly we need. I'll cover Hibernate framework. Then I'll show the integration between Spring and Hibernate, Spring ORM. Then next we cover Spring MVC, and the next Spring AOP and Spring Security and transactions. Spring transactions I'll cover. So these are the basic Spring modules that I covered first from Spring framework. So I want to divide Spring into 3 contents. Okay, one is a standard Spring framework, which covers all these modules. Then Spring Boot, all the Spring Boot features will be discussed here. Then next, microservices. We will discuss how to implement microservices, what are all the practices that we should follow, and how to use Spring Cloud features. Okay, that all we discuss here. Okay, there are many modules we have from Spring Boot and Spring Cloud features, right? That all we cover here. So we divide this into 3 sections. First we'll cover standard framework modules, Spring Core, JDBC, ORM, MVC, AOP, security and transactions. Then we go with Spring Boot and then microservices. Okay. Any doubt so far?
Sir, it's very much clear.
Sorry.
It's very
No
much
doubt.
clear.
Okay, clear. Yeah, great. So yeah, so what we understand that is Spring came in the form of jar files. We need to use that jar files for implementing our applications. Okay, and for implementing applications we can take the help of standard modules like code, JDBC, ORM, MVC, AOP, security and transactions for building a standard MVC or web application. And if you want to go beyond that, okay, here we can able to build web apps by using MVC, and we don't have microservices support when you use standard framework. But if you want to build web app plus microservices based applications, you can use Spring Boot. microservices apps also we can able to build using Spring Boot. Okay, microservices apps here you can build, and here you can take help of cloud features like AWS you can use, or Azure you can use, or GCP. Anything we can use for the deployments also. I'll show you some kind of live examples by hosting them into public. Okay, yeah, so I want to show you one. I want to start with core. Okay, first I want to start with Spring Core. I want to start with Spring Core module. Let us start with Spring Core. Okay, in Spring Core, the main important things that we need to understand is IOC and dependency injection. Okay, what is inversion of control? What is inversion of control and what is dependency injection? These two are the major topics. These two are the major topics from Spring Core. Apart from this, we have many that all we discuss. Okay, these two are the main things. Spring Core is having features that inversion of control and dependency injection features. So using these features, we can make our application very much loosely coupled, very much loosely coupled. And Spring applications are lightweight. We'll discuss about that lightweight term later. Okay, why Spring is lightweight. Okay, so we will start with these features, but before going with them, right, one by one we need to understand how to start utilizing this Spring modules. Okay, so first let's understand right, whatever MVC classes you are going to implement here, your controllers or business or DAOs, while using Spring, right, while using Spring for implementing your controllers and business classes, everything, we implement our controllers or our business classes or our DAO classes or any utility class or any utility classes. All these classes we create them like a simple POSO classes. We create them like a simple POSO classes, right? We create controller as a POSO, business also a POSO, DAO also a POSO, utilities also a POSO class, which means we are not going to extend or implement any other API classes directly. We implement our class as a simple plain Java class. We implement our controller class or business class or DAO, whatever it is for your application. Whatever the class it is for your application, we implement it as a simple POSO. Okay. So what is POSO? POSO means a plain old Java object. We can call it as plain old Java object, which means a plain bean class. Which means a plain bean class. A plain Java bean class. A plain Java bean class would be enough for your MVC classes. A simple example for your plain Java class is public class student. I'm not extending this class from any API and I'm not implementing from any API. It's a plain class that I have, and you can have your properties for your plain Java class: private, string, student name, whatever number of properties required, student name, student email, student mobile, and student location. These are my bean class properties. These are my bean class properties. And for these properties, you need to maintain some setters and getters. You need to maintain some setters and getters here. Setters and getters. This is the plain POSO class, which is having private variables, and public getters and setters. You need to write some public getter methods and setter methods. Okay. In other terminology, we call it as a encapsulated object. Okay, encapsulation. So this is my plain POSO class, which is having properties along with setter getters. This must be enough for your, this kind of classes must be enough for your controllers, business and DAOs. In place of getters are required for reading data from another class if you want. Okay, if you don't want getters, you can have your business methods here. You can have your business methods. Okay, you need to have your properties in your POSO class along with setters, along with your business methods. The purpose of application is handling a business. So your controller might have some business related use case methods and your business code and CRUD operations logics and any utilities logics that all we implemented for a business scope. So all that classes can have this kind of private variables with public setters and your business methods. Okay, now you can pass this data using Spring dependency injection. You can pass this data by using the setter methods into your class, which means whatever controller, business, DAO classes you have here, whatever the classes you have here in your MVC, if they need any inputs, if they need any inputs, that inputs we can supply using setter methods. That is what we call dependency injection. Okay, I don't want confuse in this context. Just I'll give you one connection pool here. The connection pool, if you see, connection pool means we'll have number of database connections. This will have number of database connections at the time of application startup we create. Basically, if you want to get connections from the database, your connection pool requires some properties, right? Your connection pool requires some driver name, URL, username, password, and how many number of connections you want into the connection pool. These properties we need to set. These properties we need to pass into connection pool. So whatever connection pool class you implement or already implemented class, that class will have your driver properties, driver name, URL, username, password, along with setter methods. Just you need to set all your driver URL, username, passwords into that using dependency injection, so that you could able to prepare a connection pool and you can utilize it. Not only connection pool class, your DO classes also you are going to implement in the same way, your business classes also, your controller classes also. For every class we follow the same rule. We create dependencies as the private variables and we pass them through setter methods using dependency injection. Okay, so before that, who will do all this? Who will do the dependency injection and who will provide these features? All the features will be going to provide by your Spring IOC containers. Okay, so first you need to understand your classes. Your classes you are going to create as a POSO class, whatever class it is, and you are going to run your POSO classes. You are going to run all your POSOs. All your POSOs means your controllers, DAOs, and utility classes. All these classes are going to run. You run all your POSO classes using IOC containers. Using IOC containers. Containers means, what is containers? Containers means a server. Container means a server like a Tomcat web container. WebLogic, a application container, and here also they are saying IOC. What is this IOC then? Spring is also given a IOC container similar like your Tomcat WebLogic. This is also a container. This container is capable to manage all your POSO classes. Tell me, Tomcat is a container for whom? Servlet classes, right? Tomcat is a container for servlet classes. Tomcat will manage only servlets. It will manage only servlets. WebLogic is a container, will manage servlets. It can manage servlets and EJBs also. It can manage servlets and EJBs also. A WebLogic container can manage servlets and EJBs also. And what about your IOC? As we see here in MVC, for implementing your controllers and model part, you don't need any Tomcat container direct support. You need only IOC container. Just to start your IOC container, Tomcat might be required. Okay, just to start it. But the major role is your IOC container only. So your IOC container now, it is going to manage all your controllers. Okay, it will manage your IOC container controllers, business classes, DO classes, utility classes, whatnot. Everything from your application IOC container will manage. And this container is given in the form of separate softwares. You need to download Tomcat software here. You need to download WebLogic software here. If you want to use WebLogic software, you need to download and you need to use for your application. WebLogic software. But here for IOC, right, you need not to download any special software. You need not to download any special software. Along with your Spring Core jar file, in your Spring Core jar file and Spring Context jar file. Spring Context jar file. In this jar files, right, they given some Java classes. In Spring Core jar file, they given one Java class. The class name called Bean Factory. And in Spring Context jar file, they given one Java class. The class name called Application Context. So these are the simple Java classes given out from your jar files only. From your jar files only, these classes has given. We call this Java classes as IOC containers. So here IOC containers are not special softwares that we need to download separately. These IOC containers are Java classes given in jar file. Okay, so these are not like your Tomcat or WebLogic. You need not to download them separately. Okay, these classes has given embedded as a embedded classes in your jar files itself. Along with your jar files, these container classes will be added. So you can use these classes to manage your complete MVC. Is it true? Yes. These classes behave like your containers. These classes behaves like your containers. These are the actual containers who are going to manage complete MVC. Your complete MVC classes, controllers, business, DAOs, your services, AOPs, connection pools, whatever it is, right? Any number of classes. It can be 100, 500, 1000, 10,000, 50,000, whatever number of classes. All your classes are going to manage by your IOC containers only. That too, those IOC containers are simple Java classes only. They given from your jar files only. Along with your jar files, these container classes came. Okay, so what I told you before is you need to implement your MVC classes like a POSO classes. You will realize it, right? Once done with this course, you will realize, okay, I am going to implement simple POSO for my controller, simple POSO for my business, and for my DAO, for my utility classes. And where you are going to run these classes, your POSO classes, you are going to run all your POSO classes on IOC containers only. IOC containers are simple Java classes only. Using this Java classes only, you could able to run it. When we talk about servlet, right? Servlets usually run in Tomcat, or you can run in WebLogic web container also. So we configure servlets in a web.xml file, and Tomcat will read that web.xml file and it will understand, okay, there is a servlet he implemented, I need to initialize it. So Tomcat will understand by reading web.xml file, it will create all your servlets objects and it will manage. Usually for WebLogic also we do the same. For EJBs we configure EJB XML file. For servlets we configure servlet XML files, and WebLogic will read and it will manage all your servlets and EJBs. Whereas your IOC container is a Java class. This Java class also will read a XML file. This one also will read a XML file. Your POSO classes, as a third step, what you need to do, configure POSO classes into Spring XML file. Name can be anything, okay? Spring XML file. We need to create one XML file. We need to configure all our POSOs here. Your controller POSO, class, or your business POSO class, or your DAO POSO class, right? Your utility POSO classes, whatever it is. You need to configure your POSO classes into your XML file. You need to configure your POSO classes into XML file, and this XML file you can load into your IOC container. Using this application context, we pass our XML file into this application context constructors. Okay, we pass our XML, whatever XML you use for your application, we pass that XML as an input. And we know this is a Java class. You know how to create Java class objects. Using new keyword we create. That's it. And if you want to run this, from where you need to run? Just a main method. You need to have a public static void main string args. From here you can start your application. So when you start your main method, your JVM will start main when you run it. And here we are starting IOC container by loading our XML file. When you do this, what your container will do, it will read this XML. Your container, again the container is a Java class, and you know how to call Java classes using new keyword. If you want to call any Java class methods, or if you want to create an object for any Java class, we use new keyword and we call it. Whatever bean factory or application context, we use new keyword and we create object of it. Even your container also is a Java class. You need to use new keyword to call it. Did we imagine this before? We thought containers are separate softwares we need to download, and our applications we need to move there. But here our containers are simple Java class only. Again, this class is going to manage all your classes. How it will manage all your classes? You are going to configure in a XML file your controller POSOs, or your business POSOs, or your DAO POSOs, or your utility POSOs. You are going to load into your IOC container class, and this will manage all your classes. This will manage all your controllers model classes. This will manage all your classes. That's just a minute. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Okay. Yeah. So your IOC classes are Java classes. We are going to run all our POJOs on these IOC classes only. That's it. This much simple the Spring is. We write POJOs, we configure them into XML, and we load again into our simple IOC container. In your IOC container is able to manage all your classes. It is able to manage all your controllers and model classes, everything. So yeah, that's all for today. Tomorrow I'll start with first example. Okay, you will be realize that
Sir,
any questions.
yes, sir. Sir, can you start with the Hello World application from basic?
Correct. I'll follow from very basics. Okay, if you know code Java and that too up to oops concepts, if you have up to the knowledge, oops knowledge, that would be enough here. You could able to make on your own once done with every session. Okay. Yeah, I'll start with very basic examples. Okay, you need not to worry. Basic to up to advanced level we will go. We will not feel uncomfortable while going through the advanced implementations.
Uh, sir,
Sir, are you?
can you
Go
Yes.
ahead. I will ask next.
can you go on our syllabus contents page? Go to syllabus content page.
Let me open. Hmm, this is what, right? Yeah, this is the content they posted, but I didn't put all the topics here. From IOC itself, we are going to cover. From IOC itself, we are going to cover up to 40 plus concepts. I didn't included everything here as we should not show our content. Okay. So 40 plus topics we have in IOC itself, and then JDBC, ORM, MVC, boot, and microservices. And finally, I'll give you how to use Swagger for the documentation, right? And using Mockito, how to handle JUnits also we'll cover. Apart from this, we are planning from this session Hibernate also. As a complement, we add Hibernate course also here because many of them, right? Hibernate became optional because Spring Boot given some advanced repository classes. If we go with that classes, it is not really required to have the before Hibernate knowledge. But whoever have that knowledge, that would be great. That's the reason many people not even focusing on it. But here I'm going to cover the core Hibernate also. Okay.
Yeah,
Anything else?
Naveen, in
Yeah.
this syllabus that Naveen, in this syllabus, MEC, I mean Spring security and transaction is not being shown, but you will go through that one also, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Web Flux also I want to cover. Spring Web Flux and Spring Batch also. For every topic, right? I'll cover one example so that you would be aware that in some scenarios, in some projects, you may ask for batch, Spring Batch, and for few use cases, you may need to apply Spring transactions, security. If you fall into such situation, if you have already knowledge of it, right, the basic knowledge of it, you would be comfortably able to apply that on your application. Okay.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Actually, I was not yesterday in the lecture. So can I get for yesterday a recorded session?
Today one also, right? They will send you YouTube link. There itself you can find yesterday video also. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Once with your
And going
They had
forward,
already uploaded in YouTube.
yeah.
okay,
So
okay, okay,
let
okay,
let me tell you. I understand. So every day, right? You will get class example after session. What I will do every day for
hmm,
you, I'll send class notes, class
okay,
examples with jar files, with
okay,
jars whatever I use, and from Durga Soft they will send you videos link,
okay, okay, okay. To
and
download.
yeah, you can. They will provide drive link. Would be able to download
Okay,
from drive. Yeah, if you can able to download, you can.
okay,
But
sir.
you will get these videos also for lifetime.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank
Apart from this, if you have any doubts also, you can personally reach out to me. I'll share my contact details also.
you. Okay, sir.
So what's the difference between web services and microservices?
Both are same. They are not different. Microservices is a pattern or a principle that we follow. Basically, web service means earlier how we used to implement big application itself. We used to implement it as a web service. Whenever we need a call from one application to another application, we used to make a call to that application. But now in current world, people don't want spend whole time building a big application and test it and deploy it, and finally they don't want to see failure from it. And if they want to complete their business by implementing parallel services from multiple teams, that is not possible with monolithic style. So that's why they want to break their modules into multiple pieces and multiple teams. They can work parallelly and we can deploy. Each other can talk later if they want. Basically, for agility, microservices are recommended. Consider you have a business. Okay, you have a business, you want to start that very soon. You have a business and you want to start it very soon, and you don't want to spend lot of time for implementing application for your business. A kind of OTT platform you want to implement. For that you want to implement login module, video streaming module, video uploading module, multimedia module, images module, thumbnails module. Like that, if you want to implement multiple modules for your OTT app. Now if you follow without microservice pattern, if you assign only one team, like with 5 team members, if they start implementing one by one all these 6 7 modules, they might take multiple months to implement and make it ready. But if you choose this microservice pattern, right, you can implement each module as a separate service, and for each module you can assign separate team. They could able to achieve this in a month or in a weeks of time, and all that services will be ready to utilize, and you can launch your product into market as soon as possible. And
So
not only that, while streaming, if you want to scale up your servers, if you want to speed up the video streaming, all that scale up, scale downs, everything you can able to achieve from the cloud. So as cloud is there, as cloud is supporting, why can't we use cloud features? So if you implement your applications as microservices, you can comfortably use all cloud features. That's the reason people are moving towards it.
we can say that microservices is more loosely coupled.
There are many, we need to discuss the topic separately. There are many things. Now, loosely
Yes.
coupled, technology independent, cloud support, you know, separate teams can work.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will go in detail while doing microservice discussions. Okay, why those patterns are recommended. So yeah, that's all for today. Okay, we'll catch up 8:30 tomorrow. Till then, good day. So if you
Thank
have
you, sir.
any questions ready
Thank
for
you, sir.
tomorrow's session, after tomorrow's session, we'll have that questionnaire section. Okay,
Okay,
we'll
sir.
spend daily 5 to 10 minutes for this discussion. After session, we can share on
Timing, sir, 8:30.
8:30. 8:30 to 10 we will
8:30.
discuss. 8:30 to 10. Yeah, that's all, guys. Good day. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks all. Thanks for your participation.